Welcome everyone. Good evening to you all. Today's session is going to be choosing the right tool to make your website with Piotr, who works with us at AstroLabs. Yes, I couldn't pronounce your last name, Piotr. It's fine. My name is Amir. I'm the learning consultant at the AstroLabs Academy. I handle everything about the tech courses that we have, such as data science, data analysis, and coding. And I'm here basically just to do the instruction, and I'll leave it up to Peter. Just a small intro about what we're trying to achieve here at the AstroLabs. Basically, our mission is to drive the MENA region's growth into a world-class digital and entrepreneurial ecosystem. We help with different verticals, such as recruitment, building your business here in KSA, learning and upskilling, and also a co-working space. The aim is basically to help any individual or company to take them to the next step they want in their career from the digital perspective. Yes, just to enjoy the session and to make sure you benefit out from it, feel free to ask questions. Please, you can open your mic, you can use the chat to ask as many questions as you want. We love questions. We're here to help you. This session is for you to learn something new. So if you have any question in mind, anything, we are here to help you. Yep, and I will leave it to Piotr. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Amar. Nice having everyone here. I hope you are doing good. Okay, so like Amar mentioned, the title of today's session is choosing the right tool to make your website. Okay, let's go through the second title. Okay, fun fact to start with. Over 4.6 billion people in the world use or have access to the internet, and studies have shown that 79% of them will search for another site if they don't like yours. Maybe not, maybe you're not losing billions, but still potentially you can lose up to 79% of users if your website isn't appealing enough for them. Okay. A bit about me. My name is Peter. Like my last name is Mrozowski, but you don't have to try to pronounce it. And I am a front-end developer. I have a quite a varied career background. I did sales. I worked in various forms of IT. I also worked on ships as a marine engineer, sailing all across Europe, Asia, Africa. Been everywhere, but at some point, unfortunately, I developed nerve damage in my left arm. I couldn't continue that career path, went back to IT, discovered programming, or more like started treating it seriously, found my love and passion for it, and been doing that ever since. I came to Dubai shortly before the pandemic, and it's here where I got more practice, grew as a programmer. I did a bootcamp at AstroLabs a bit over a year ago, and now I'm working for the company as a front-end developer. Okay, that's enough about me. Okay, what are we gonna talk about more specifically? Website tools and platforms overview. So I'm just gonna give you a quick introduction on what is all the things that are available. Then we're gonna move on to no-code platforms, low-code platforms, custom-made static sites, custom-made dynamic sites. We're going to talk all about the differences between all those, and which solution to choose and when. It's going to be our summary, right? Okay, choosing the right tool. Okay, so how it all started. The basic building blocks of a website are HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. HTML5 is the latest one, and CSS3 is the latest iteration of CSS as well. Technically, you only need HTML, and that's what the first sites used. Because I always like to use the house analogy when comparing web technologies. So HTML would be the structure, the fundaments, the walls, the windows. CSS would be the color on the walls, the shape of the roof, the fact that the windows are aligned, and JavaScript would be the functionality, so the electricity in the home, the plumbing, and so on. Okay, I don't want to get into too much detail about this, but I do want to show you some examples. Okay, just bear with me here. Go here. So everybody knows Amazon, right? And some years ago, the company wasn't as big as it is now. It started as an online bookseller, and this was actually their website in the 90s. I only have a image of it. It's not a functional website anymore, but this is what they had back then. It's like bare bones simple. You couldn't get away with making something like that in these days. One more, Apple. And actually, the one for Apple is a bit more interesting because it shows a trend that was quite dominant in those days. So table layout. You would have a column here, second row, 2 columns. And well, that's how 90% of websites looked in the 90s, if I remember correctly. Okay, and still, like I said, Apple, Amazon weren't as big as they are now, but they were still professional, respectable companies. More amateurish sites would look like this. And to scare you a bit more, I found a live one that's unchanged from the 90s. You can open it yourself. It's arngren.net. It still works. You can scroll it both vertically, horizontally. You can see a search bar here and one here for some reason. So as you can see, website design was pretty different to what it is now. Okay, back to the presentation. And yeah, so before I move on to no code, the fact that it was so simple, required so little, the learning curve wasn't too high as well. So basically you need a few months at top practice and you could make websites to the standard of what Amazon, Apple offered back in the day. I remember I started learning like basic coding when I was 14, something around that, which was longer ago than I care to admit. And yeah, you could have a website going without much skills required. However, as internet became more available, as broadband connections were more available as well, more people had access to it, and the website market started becoming more competitive, and also the tools became more advanced. So let's say you were a tech-savvy individual, you knew about all this internet thing, and you wanted your business to have a website. Okay, but another guy also wanted to do that, so you had to compete. So you had to have your website better than his. So the services offered there, or the presentation of your material service would be better than his. And competition drives progress. So the tools started getting more advanced, the technologies as well as tools, yeah. And so were the skills required. So suddenly you couldn't just get a teenager or sit down for some time and make a competitive website. You needed to hire someone. So you had a market need for good websites, and you had one way to get one. Hire a webmaster was a big title back then. However, the market was searching for another solution, which was, okay, let's just give people a tool to make websites on their own. Because, we had graphic design programs back then, and people look at a website, it's some squares here, some text and so on. Let's just let people, move some stuff around, type some stuff on the keyboard, and halas, we have a website. So that's how we move on to no code. And it's not a new concept. Like the terms like visual programming or rapid application development were around for quite some time. A no-code platform requires no skill or coding knowledge from you. So you literally don't have to know HTML, CSS, JavaScript, nothing. They're often referred to what you see is what you get, and there's actually an acronym for it, WYSIWYG, which is crazy, but I did not make it up. It's an actual acronym where when you see job offers or descriptions, this is the acronym people use. And when I saw it the first time, I was like, what the hell? But anyway, the main downside is a limited customization when it comes to no-code platforms. Okay. Oh yeah. This is supposed to be just a brief overview. Okay, low code. To a limited capacity, they can be used in a way similar to no-code solutions. So you usually also have a GUI, so a graphic user interface, to drag and drop stuff around. They require coding knowledge to be properly utilized. So if you want to use them to the full potential, you actually need to know a coding language like JavaScript or PHP. They offer some standardization because they handle a lot of heavy lifting for you. And if you use the same platform to develop a series of applications, and then let's say that the workflow is gonna be similar in each of those. Still, the customization offered by these solutions is limited to completely handmade applications. And that's how we go to static sites, which, okay, I'll elaborate on this further, but the basic premise is that they deliver files from the server in an unchanged way. So the server doesn't generate anything. So thinking of a static site, think of, I don't know, a website for a restaurant business. When you have opening hours, a menu, some pictures and so on, that doesn't need to be generated because it's constant. It may need to be updated every few months, but you do that manually. Whereas a dynamic site would be something more like Amazon, for example, when the list and images, prices of items that people want to sell have to be taken from a database or from what's available and then displayed in the browser. Okay. Okay. Now let's talk a bit more about no-code platforms. So, like I mentioned, these platforms use GUI, which stands for graphical user interface, mainly in the form of drag and drop tools in order for you to create your application. You don't need to write a single line of code. You have to do some input sometimes, but it's not code. Let's say you want to have a specific width, height, some distance in pixels and whatever. Okay, but you don't have to write elements, functions, create objects, and so on. Another benefit is low cost, and that comes mainly from the fact that you don't need to hire a developer or multiple developers. So depending on how advanced your project is and who you need to get, that can lead to some substantial savings, right? Downsides. Okay, there is a lack of customization available in these platforms. So they at times can be pretty specialized in what they do, but there is no way to go beyond that. They may have some predefined plugins that they accept to be connected to the application, but that's basically it. So let's say you're an employee, just use this analogy here, and you're in charge of creating the app, the tool in a no-code platform. Your boss comes along and says, okay, I want this, and this. And you're like no, because this doesn't even, the shapes don't match. So yeah, you often get to the point that you would like to implement something and it's just not possible. In a custom solution, you can always add something, you can find a workaround. I mean, to an extent, in these you can as well, but it's really messy. It can get really messy. Also, the cost can okay, maybe not so quickly, but it can outweigh the benefits. Because when you start, okay, the barrier to entry is very low. Okay, you make an account on a no-code platform. That's usually a ton of tutorials, how to get started, how to make something basic. There's templates. So you click around, you position the elements how you like them. You choose the font sizes, you put in the content, add some pictures, and so on. And you're good. And you're thinking, okay, this is basically what I need. And why not just use this? And to some extent, that may actually work. However, as the complexity of your application grows, so does the complexity of the solutions that need to be implemented. So it just gets harder to keep track of it. If you're doing it by yourself from the start, okay, it's maybe not that big of an issue. However, you may need to spend more and more time figuring out the specific no-code platform, because they can also deal with logic in their own way, which may not be transferable between platforms, and you just need to find a way to figure it out. But the bigger problem is when, let's say, you get here in complexity, and okay, you're a business owner, you're making this app for your business, but your business grows. Okay, you expand, you get more clients, you have more duties, more things to manage. So you delegate an employee, or just get someone to manage the app for you. But then they don't start here. They don't start where you started. They have to start here. And there isn't really a thing like a no-code developer. I mean, that's basically an oxymoron, because you're not a developer. Never mind. So you have to train that person, and then they can also move on. They can change a position. They can get promoted. They can move on to a different company. So you have to do that all over again with someone that's not really specialized in this. So that's kind of a big downside right there. Okay. Some selected platforms. I assume that some of you have heard about Wix or use Wix even, which is a very popular tool for creating web and mobile apps. I have not used it personally, but I have been in contact with people that have, with businesses that have, and just like I said earlier, they got to the point where they needed extra solutions, they needed a revamp, and they were looking for answers, and there wasn't much that could be done within Wix. There are some compromises you can make, but like I say, it gets really messy, and it's better to use a different solution, in my opinion. Bubble, less popular. I tried using it for a bit. Certainly a lot of options, a lot of to configure, not very intuitive in my opinion. And as far as I know, you can only make web apps with it. Now, Webflow. Now, this is one I can actually say some good things about. And actually, let me show you. Is anyone familiar with Webflow? Anybody used it before? Okay, never mind. Let's open it. Okay, so I just made this basic, simple skeleton of a landing page. And why I'm saying that, I can actually mention some good things about Webflow. Because, okay, first of all, I like how it looks, and it kind of looks like Photoshop, so maybe designers also like it. But when you manipulate the display, the styling, and so on, let's say you have display here, block display, flex, grid, inline block, inline, none. Those are all names used in CSS, used in actual web development. So this is extremely intuitive for developers. It's very useful for designers, because if they make something in this and then communicate with the developer, we basically speak the same language then, because we use the values that are included in coding languages, values and names of parameters and attributes. It's very good for designers to show something for developer. Let's say, okay, you have a basic layout, but the designer has a specific thing in mind. Let's say for this button, okay, you wants it to change color over hover, and wants a specific duration. Well, a specific duration over which the hover happens. Well, it can be done here very easily. I mean, I've used this program for the first time, and this whole thing took me literally 2-3 minutes to figure out. It's very intuitive. You just go to the button, you apply the transition, and when you want it to happen, how long for it to last. Very nice to work with. So Webflow is one I could recommend in certain cases. Right? Back to the presentation. Okay. Like I said, no code is not no concept, but we've seen a grow in the last 10 years, let's say. You can see it started dropping down, but maybe market is getting oversaturated. Not quite sure. And however, there was a growing, there still is kind of a growing trend since 2010, 2011. So it's not something that's dying right now. Okay, when to actually use no-code platforms? Okay, when you're operating with a very constrained budget, so you need a solution. You can't think about getting a developer. You want it out, and you want it out quite fast. For simple projects that will not require more advanced features in the future, and I really want to stress this point. It's really important to plan your application out. What exactly you do need, what you will need, and then you can either go to your developer or go to an agency or get a freelancer, give them requirements, and a good professional should tell you, okay, you will be good enough with low code, or you need a static site, or maybe for just to test it out, you can go with no code. Okay, so the planning aspect, knowing exactly what you want, and maybe even more importantly, what you will require in the future is very important. Okay, and the last point, when wanting to showcase an idea, like I showed you in Webflow, you want to show something fast. Okay, you're a designer or a developer. You see a part of your existing app, for example. You think you can make it a bit better. You just open Webflow, do some quick changes, get it to your boss or coworkers. Okay, guys, how about we do it like this? It's very good for that, my opinion. Right now, low code. So these are solutions that are hybrid between using a GUI, graphic user interface, and writing actual code. So to a limited capacity, like I said before, they can be used like no-code apps, so no-code platforms. Sorry. So you can drag and drop a bit, but to use them to their full potential, you actually need a developer. Developer that knows most commonly JavaScript, PHP, preferably both, And yeah, in these platforms, many features are already in place and need only to be customized. Like the most common low-code platform, and I'm sure all of you heard about, is WordPress, right? Anybody didn't hear about WordPress? I just think not. So you have lots of templates, themes, plugins, everything. You just need to basically adjust them. But to do any kind of deeper customization or to actually fit it to your business need, you do need a developer. And they still allow you to save costs because the fact that a platform like WordPress, which is often referred to as a CMS, content management system, does a lot of the heavy lifting for you. So it handles all or pretty much all of the business logic or of the actual backend. So you need fewer developers to work on it because you don't have to architect the entire solution by yourself. So yeah, that is an upside. And another thing, multiple projects can share a similar workflow. So the basic structure is similar across different apps you might make with WordPress, for example. And moving on to others, starting new projects, well, it's not completely different. Okay, so it's kind of speeds up development. There are, however, downsides to these solutions. And okay, they're still not as customizable as handmade applications. It's handwritten more likely. And all of these downsides pretty much fit into customization, because also the fact that they can only be optimized to a certain point, and that there may be some security concerns, all comes from the fact that, well, you just can't customize it. You cannot implement custom features, custom tools, use whatever languages, technologies you like to make the app perform better, work faster, load faster. And also you cannot employ or design you cannot employ or design whichever security measures you would like. You have some freedom in there, but it's still not as much as you would have, well, in this case, in a dynamic application you would create by yourself, or you would have somebody create for you. Okay. Now this is a poll made for developers. If they were to make an application that required complex business logic, what would they use? I mean, what did they use now, or what do they use now, and what do they foresee, expect, predict that they may use in the future? So for now, fully custom coding. But in the future, they predict that, or assume or hope that they will be able to use low-code development tools or platforms. And okay, this might be a bit misleading because what developers usually mean when they talk about, okay, they would like some high-level low-code solution to handle certain aspects, is that, yeah, we would like those tools. We would like to have those tools to handle the things in the code that we have to just rewrite all the time. So let's say authentication, logins, and so on. So it would be good to just have tools that, okay, we just put that in. It handles that thing that has to be done, but it's always done in a similar way, and we can focus on the more complex issues or some styling or whatever is needed. Right. This graph illustrates that, well, you do need a professional developer to run a low-code, run an app that you deploy on a low-code platform. That's the majority of responses. A bit less is local platforms used by business users in collaboration with a developer, with IT. So in this case, maybe a business user might be doing more of the drag and drop, or just hinting solutions, and the programmer does the actual coding. And well, yeah, and you can see no code at the bottom. So it is the least popular option because of some quite significant downsides, which, in my opinion, make no code solution mainly good for, like I mentioned, showcasing your project. Okay, now we're moving to static sites, and just a bit of clarification here. Both no code, low code, custom made can be static or dynamic. So what I mean here is that by static, okay, handmade static solutions, so the ones ones that a developer writes out completely by themselves, and those where you do not need server-side functionality. Now again, if you want to be pedantic, every site needs to be deployed on a server. So in theory, it has server-side functionality, because if it weren't deployed to a server, you wouldn't access it in the browser. But what I mean here is that it doesn't need to be generated by the server. The server doesn't need to do any work on the site except for delivering it. Okay. So what are static sites made of? So you have the basic building blocks, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And well, in theory, well, even in practice, they can be all you need. You can make a really good, reasonably well optimized website just using this three. However, there exist specialized tools called static site generators that make this job much more efficient, easier, and produce better results. The first one of these static site generators I would like to talk about is Gatsby.js. Now, it's a framework for React. Okay, has anybody heard of React? It is, well, for years now, and the most popular front-end framework. Okay, I don't want to confuse you too much, because React is a framework for JavaScript, and Gatsby is a framework on top of React. Okay, so I don't want to make it sound too confusing. React itself is a very powerful tool used in full stack development. It's actually part of a MERN stack, which I will mention or talk more about later. And Gatsby extracts from React the functionality needed to make static websites, and well, excels in it. It has almost 4,000 contributors, which is the number of contributors is a mark of how fast new features are implemented, how fast bugs are detected and fixed. So the higher the better. Used by almost 400,000 developers, and it creates unbelievably fast, smooth, amazing websites. Let me just go out from the presentation again and show you an example of how it actually works. Okay, just as a point of reference, I'm going to go to homepage of WordPress. Okay, we talked about WordPress. This is their homepage. Okay, just gonna click a bit so you notice the speed. It's reasonably fast. I mean, it's the homepage of WordPress. It's has to be kind of well optimized. But when you go to Gatsby, okay, this is instant. Like, I sometimes feel that the content changes before I lift my my finger off of the left click button. It's crazy fast, unbelievable. Often, I mean, I've been dealing with Gatsby for a while now, but still, often I'm amazed how quick and how smoothly it can operate. Also, the fact that it's based on React being so popular, there's a lot of developers that if they don't know Gatsby, the learning curve is very low. It's very likely that they do know React, right? Next.js, also a framework for React. It's often technically classified as a static site generator, but it's more like Gatsby on steroids, or a compromise between Gatsby and pure React. 1.7K contributors and used by over 400,000 developers. It's also a very popular technology. So if React is this really powerful tool to mainly use in full stack development, but you can use it for static sites as well, it's nothing stopping you. Gatsby is okay, technically just for static sites. The next would be a hybrid. So when you don't really want to go full stack, so you don't want to design, you don't want to go into the MERN stack, you don't want to design all of the logic, but you want to have more functionality and more customizability than with Gatsby, you go with Next. ViewPress. ViewPress is a static site generator built on top of Vue. So it's a framework for Vue.js. Now, if you're not into development, it's very likely you have not heard about Vue itself, because it's still not very well known. I mean, it's greatly less popular than React. It only has, ViewPress itself only has 355 contributors used by just shy of 20,000 developers. It's just a framework, but Vue itself, it's also vastly less popular than React. However, every developer I talked to that work with Vue has praised it, and they love working with it. And you can see when you're looking at comparisons how fast web technologies grow. Vue is up there. It's really growing in popularity. So it can be an alternative for Gatsby. Nuxt.js, which is another framework for Vue.js. And well, if you can say that ViewPress is comparable to Gatsby, then Nuxt is comparable to Next. I mean, they even stole the name. I'm not okay. I'm not accusing them of stealing the name. It's not what I said. But they kind of won the right on the popularity, is what it seems like to me. Even less contributors, only 337. Still not very popular, but like I said, Vue is growing. So if you don't fancy Next, Nuxt might worth be checking out. This shows a pool made among developers, which static site generators have they been using in the last year. And as you can see, Gatsby and Next lead by a landslide. They are the most popular by a lot. We have Nuxt here and ViewPress right here. So there are other technologies here. There's Hugo and Jekyll, Gitbook 11t, and others. I did not mention those for two main reasons. Firstly, Gatsby Gatsby Next are built on React, Nuxt, and WordPress are built on Vue. And those are, well, React isn't going anywhere anytime soon for sure. It's been the most popular web framework for years, and it just keeps growing. People love working with it. It's not gonna be outdated, deprecated anytime soon, especially because it was made and is maintained by Facebook. So it has some proper developers writing the code. Same, another thing for Vue. It's only growing in popularity, and as it grows, so will the static site generators based on it. And second argument why why I didn't mention the other generators, and the four Gatsby Next, Nuxt, and WordPress are just considered to be more advanced in what they do. So if you go for a tool like this, my honest recommendation is go for one of these four. Right? Now we can move on to dynamic sites. Okay, and again, same as with static, both no-code and low-code and handmade can be dynamic. These are applications that you would have developed by someone else when you need a complex and custom created solution, right? Sorry. They take what is made to use a static website. So this is usually, it has to be the same, because these three elements, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, are the only things that a browser understands. So on the front end, it has to be these three. So they take this, and it composes what we call the client side. So you see in the browser, and then they take a backend language. Okay, not all of those are technical languages, but bear with me. They take a backend solution, and that is what we refer to as a server side. So that's where the most of the business logic happens. Okay, a bit about the languages themselves. Like I said, not all of them are languages per se. Okay, Node.js is a runtime environment that enables you to write JavaScript in the backend. So you can use this language in the backend, and that's a very strong advantage, because you only, in order to create a full stack app when you're using Node, you only need to use one coding language. Huge advantage. Yeah, another thing about Node, it's very fast, very highly performant, cost effective, because it's full stack JS, so you don't need to either have developers knowing all kinds of different languages. It's easy to learn, relatively easy to learn, because a web developer usually knows JavaScript. So if they know JavaScript, the learning curve to Node is not that high. I mean, there are different paradigms, there are different use cases that you have to deal with. You deal with different challenges on the server side and the client side, but you can do it with one language, so that eliminates that difficulty. One of the downsides to Node, though, is that performance can dip when it is dealing with heavy computation tasks, and that's due to JavaScript being single-threaded. It's always some downside, unfortunately. And another thing is that, okay, there's a lot of JavaScript developers, a lot of very good JavaScript developers, but it's not so easy to find an expert in Node. A lot of people writing it, but true expert masters are harder to find. Java. I assume everybody heard of Java. Very established language, been around for over 20 years, yeah. Famous for its security, not the best when it comes to speed and performance. and the code written in Java can get quite complex and not easy to read. Okay, Golang, made by Google, a young language. First stable release was in 2021. It's considered to be quite easy to learn. It's really fast. However, it does have very unconventional error handling. I mean, I'm not going to bore you with the details, but the way errors are handled in Go is just not what developers are used to, and it might get quite confusing. Okay. PHP, also quite well established. I mean, WordPress runs on PHP, so yeah, it is well established. It's part of the LAMP stack, which I will mention when talking about the next slide. Okay, it's very well established. There are a lot of developers that know PHP, but there are fewer and fewer programmers that pick it up, and that's mainly due to the fact that programmers hate working with PHP. When you look at polls, statistics, surveys of most hated, dreaded languages, PHP is usually in the top 5. So people just don't wanna pick it up. So maybe if you wanna have work on a young team, have a young team of developers, PHP might not be the best option in that case. Python, I assume everybody's heard of Python. It's all the rage right now, machine learning. Who doesn't like machine learning or doesn't want to have machine learning? Considered quite easy to learn, very easy to debug because the code is being executed line by line. So when something bad happens, it stops the execution, throws an error. Yeah, I don't want to bore you too much with developer talk, but it's just really good error handling. It's not the fastest, so which is a trade-off for it being easy, because if it doesn't offer too much complication to write things in it, it has to do some stuff for you, which makes it slower and makes it not very memory efficient, which in turn makes it unfit for mobile development. Ruby. Ruby is an interesting one. I'm assuming, actually, no, you might have heard of Ruby. It's very safe. It has built-in protection from cross-site scripting, cross-site request forgery, and SQL injection. It's fast to write code in it, and it has a very huge loyal following of developers. Usually they praise Ruby, how good it is and so on, how good it is to work with it, how good are the solutions implemented, everything about it. And yet it remains very unpopular, and it's been around since, okay, I don't want to lie, I think since the late 90s. So it's more than 20 years. I don't know if it's the lack of marketing or if there's really something wrong deep inside it that people just don't employ it in a big scale. I mean, one of the downsides is definitely that it's not the fastest when used in big applications, but by big, I mean Twitter big. So before you get to that point, it's still not popular. So choosing to make your site with Ruby, make your app with Ruby, does have the risk of you might not be able to find many developers to work on it. C#, part of .NET, part of .NET languages. When you hear .NET, think Microsoft, and you would, in my opinion, it would only use C# when working with Microsoft technology. When you have an app that integrates various Microsoft services, works with something based on Windows, then you would use C#. And you wouldn't use it in other cases for a crucial reason, which is it needs to be deployed to a Windows server. And well, all of the other languages can be deployed to a Linux server or whichever. And Linux servers have the well-deserved, in my opinion, reputation of being much, much better for deployment. Okay. The stacks I mentioned before. Okay, you might be asking yourself, okay, why did I put 4 stacks that basically look the same? They just copy paste and forgot to change stuff, and just one that looks different. Why I put them here is because all of these 3 stacks only require the knowledge of JavaScript. They are comprised of MongoDB, Express, React, Angular Vue, or Node. Since the names MERN, mean, Maven. I'm not sure Maven is catching up yet, but it's there. And you have the LAMP stack, which instead of one language JavaScript makes use of the Linux operating system, Apache for servers, MySQL for databases, and PHP for backend language. And here you have the non-relational database with MongoDB, which data is basically stored in a JSON format, which is JavaScript object notation, so JavaScript. Express.js, JavaScript again. It's a framework / middleware for Node.js. React, front-end framework, the framework for JavaScript as well. And Node, a runtime environment also for JavaScript. So there's still lots of use cases, lots of solutions that would require or make it more desired or optimal to use a different environment, different stack, different backend language, but these are very popular for a reason, because you have a developer or you are experienced in these 3, you just need to change the front-end framework and you're done. You can work in a completely different, well, not completely, but a different stack, just replacing one technology. Okay. Yeah, most popular web technologies, JavaScript on the top for years, and this might be even a bit misleading, because you have JavaScript here, you have Node, which is the runtime environment for JavaScript. You have TypeScript, that's a superset of JavaScript that enables static typing. And do we have anything else here? No, but still, here, and here. That's all JavaScript. It's very popular. Pretty much all web developers know JavaScript. So it's relatively much easier to do full stack with just JavaScript when compared to picking up a ton of or multiple other languages. Same for frameworks. Like I said, that one of the parts of the MERN, the mean, Maven stack is Express. You have Express right here as the 3rd most popular framework. And again, these are all JavaScript, React, jQuery. Mostly used, I didn't mention it in this presentation because it's mostly used for maintaining legacy. Legacy code is not really often used now in new applications. Some people still do it, but it's getting replaced by other frameworks. But still, it's JavaScript. So Express, Angular, Vue, all JavaScript. You even have Gatsby down here. So the most popular language is JavaScript. The most popular frameworks are JavaScript, and among the most popular frameworks is Express. So I hope you kind of get the point why I showcased the 3 very similar stacks and just one different. Okay, we run out of time. Let's get to the summary. When would you use which solution and when? no code. We need a very simple app to showcase a piece of functionality. So, not the entire application, but you have an idea in your head, you want to show it fast, or to your customer base, or to your company, whoever, you can do it in no code. And to add basic interactivity to design. So I said Webflow, for example, I think very nice tool for designers in certain circumstances. Low code. When you need a more functional app, we need to save costs and save time. And okay, this applies mostly to low code, to some degree also to no code. Sometimes when you have an idea within a business, for example, but you're not sure how it's going to be received in the market, you're not sure how it's going to work, how the customer is going to react. You don't want to pump in tens, hundreds, millions of dollars or whichever currency into a fully developed solution. You want to test the waters a bit. Okay. In that case, you start with low code, with some basic functionality, some placeholders, check the reception. It works. Okay, it works. Okay, you go to full stack. It doesn't. Okay, you didn't commit too much. You didn't commit too much that it would be a huge loss. Static site generators. When you need a custom-made, highly optimized website, remember how fast Gatsby was. You don't need or need limited server-side functionality, because even though generators like Gatsby or technically for static sites, you can still add some plugins. People make blogs with Gatsby, and that's offering dynamic content. So you can integrate it with it. You can integrate it with a CMS. So there are many use cases. And custom full stack application. When you need an advanced solution that you will be in full control of, and there are degrees within full stack applications. I mean, you don't need a new Facebook or a new Netflix or a new Amazon, which are giant full stack apps. But you might own a hotel, for example. You want to have your own custom booking service. You don't want to pay for external services handling that for you, or you don't want to be dependent on them. They go down and they slow down, where that database of customers gets leaked, and then your customers get leaked, and you have no control over that, but they hold you responsible. So when you have full control, you go for a full stack application. All right, and that's all from me. Thank you all for listening. It took a while, but I just love talking about coding. It's hard to shut me off when I start. If there are any questions, comments, anything, I'll be happy to hear them right now. What kind of website do you suggest, Ekta? Which kind of website? For what? What do you mean? For something to showcasing your services. So, I mean, you just like to display like what you're offering, or okay. Yeah, to an extent, Wix could work, and if it's just supposed to be, nothing changing there, just supposed to be static, what you offer. Yeah, I would still recommend at least WordPress or static, but yeah. I mean, I always recommend the custom build solutions, because they're, CEO is another aspect. That's right. I mean, the best option I feel is an actual site made with a static site generator in your case. So Gatsby or ViewPress. That would be the best. You have full control over SEO, and yeah, you're welcome. Right. Thanks everyone. Thanks for joining. Thanks for taking the time to listen to the presentation. It was a pleasure having you, and have a great evening.